Start in a room you have probably never thought about. A school administrative office. Imagine it. Beige walls, a fluorescent hum, a scuffed counter, and a stack of standard bureaucratic forms. Nothing of consequence usually happens in rooms exactly like this one, except this one specific room in a school in Utah where a teenager walked in, picked up a pen, and wrote her name down without a single word that had been rigidly attached to it since the very second of her birth. She dropped the name. And then, reportedly, according to explosive social media chatter and exclusive theories floating around the Sister Wives universe, a phone rang. The fallout from that single moment on a piece of paper has created a tidal wave that nobody saw coming. Before we dive deep into exactly whose phone rang and what was said, do me a quick favor. If you love unraveling these deep Sister Wives mysteries as much as I do, please impress that like button and subscribe to this channel right now so you never miss an update. To understand why this is sending shockwaves through a family we have watched for over a decade, we have to talk about exactly who this teenager is. We are talking about Truly, the youngest daughter of Christine and Kody. For years, the adults in this family have commanded the spotlight with their explosive arguments, their dramatic exits, and their constant battles over respect and loyalty. But suddenly, one teenager's quiet, untelevised decision has become bigger news than absolutely anything the adults have done all year. Why? Because dropping a family name in a patriarchal system isn't just a preference, it is a profound declaration. But this brings up a massive question. What does changing a name or dropping a surname on a school document actually require? If you look at standard procedures, a school form isn't just a casual piece of paper. You can't just walk in and demand to be called something else on official records without raising eyebrows, especially if you are navigating the complex line between minor and adult. Usually, an administrative system requires legal backing, a birth certificate, a court order, or, at the very least, the signature of a legal guardian. The system is designed to keep a child tied to the identity chosen by their parents. So, if a teenager writes down a new name, an incomplete name, a name missing that heavy, loaded anchor of her father's lineage, what happens next? Does the school just accept it? Or do they require proof? And if they require proof, who signed off on it? This very procedural reality opens the door to our next burning question. Finish this sentence for me in the comments right now. A kid only drops their father's last name when blank. Whatever word comes to you first, that's the one I want. Don't clean it up. Don't overthink it. Your first word is more honest than your third. Drop it in the comments right now. Now, let's look at the dates because the timeline here is absolutely fascinating and packed with exclusive theories that have social media completely lit up. According to intense online tracking and recent updates echoing through the fandom, a very specific date emerged, April 2nd, 2026. Reports in social media sleuths started buzzing about a formal name change step being initiated. Rumors of court forms being filed began circulating. We all know Christine relocated to Utah, seeking a fresh start, pulling Truly out of the toxic environment that Flagstaff had become. But a fresh start on reality television is one thing, a fresh start in the eyes of the law is something entirely different. When April 2nd rolled around, the chatter wasn't just about Truly preferring a nickname. It was about formal, documented steps, which begs a massive chicken and egg question that we have to unpack. Which came first, the school form or the court form? Did Truly march into that beige school office feeling emboldened because the legal wheels were already turning? Or did the incident at the school force the family's hand into making it legal? Think about the psychology here. A teenager stepping up to a counter, knowing full well the weight of the surname she is actively choosing not to write down. The surname Brown isn't just a name in this context. It is a television brand. It is a symbol of a polygamous patriarch who has spent the better part of the last few years demanding loyalty from children he barely speaks to. Dropping that name is the ultimate act of quiet rebellion. It strips away the brand, the patriarchal ownership, and the reality TV legacy, leaving only the person underneath. But in the world of Kody Brown, a quiet rebellion never stays quiet for long. Someone always notices. A piece of paper is filed, a digital record is updated, and eventually the system alerts the one person who cannot handle losing control. which leads us perfectly into the explosive allegations that surfaced just a few months later, changing the entire trajectory of this story. The transition from a rumored legal filing in April to what happened in the summer is where this narrative shifts from a private family matter into a bureaucratic showdown. Because in late July, the narrative surrounding this name change took a dark and highly debated turn. We are talking about July 30th, 2026. This is when explosive allegations involving the local school board began to surface across social media platforms. According to these exclusive theories, the Beige Administrative Office wasn't the end of the line. The quiet act of a teenager filling out a form allegedly triggered a direct response from the patriarch himself. The rumors suggest that a father, sitting states away, somehow got wind of the alteration to his daughter's official identity and decided to make a phone call. But not just to his ex-wife, to the school board. And that leaves us staring down a deeply complex legal and emotional question. What standing does a father have here at all? When a father is living in a completely different state, having spent years physically and emotionally separated from the daily realities of his daughter's life, his legal standing becomes a tangled, complicated web of interstate custody agreements and conflicting state laws. In the eyes of the Utah educational system, a parent with joint legal custody might technically have the right to access educational records or be informed of major administrative changes. But does that legal right extend to dictating exactly what a teenager writes on a piece of paper on a random Tuesday? Does a furious, allegedly demanding phone call from Flagstaff, Arizona, have the actual bureaucratic power to force a local Utah school administrator to pull out a bottle of whiteout, erase Truly's chosen identity, and forcefully reinstate the Brown surname against her explicit will? The reality of the situation is that the school board found itself caught directly in the crossfire of a deeply publicized, highly volatile family fracture. The moment these exclusive theories hit the internet, social media exploded with furious speculation about this alleged phone call. People were aggressively dissecting every single possible angle of the confrontation. Some exclusive insider theories claimed Kody demanded the school revert to her legal birth name immediately on all platforms, citing his absolute parental rights and threatening legal action if they complied with a minor's unauthorized name alteration. Others suggested the school board simply shut it down, pointing to the undeniable fact that Christine, as the primary physical custodial parent living within their specific district boundaries, had already implicitly or explicitly authorized the change by not objecting to it. This intense clash between perceived patriarchal entitlement and cold, hard bureaucratic reality perfectly illustrates the central, burning conflict of the entire Sister Wives universe right now. For over a decade on our television screens, Kody has always operated under the unshakable assumption that his authority is absolute. He believes it is a divine, unquestionable right granted to him simply by his position as the patriarchal head of the family. He is used to demanding respect, demanding loyalty, and punishing anyone who falls out of line by withdrawing his time and his affection. We saw it with Gabriel. We saw it with Garrison. We saw it with Isabel. But a local school board in the state of Utah does not operate on fundamentalist patriarchal rules or reality television drama. They operate strictly on family law, custody decrees, and state statutes. And under those rigid state statutes, a father's grip is not nearly as ironclad as he might confidently believe, especially when he is separated by hundreds of miles, state lines, and a massive, perhaps unbridgeable emotional chasm. This bitter, inescapable realization for Kody opens up an even more fascinating, high-stakes discussion about time, aging, and the absolute, terrifying limits of parental control. Which brings us directly to the next critical link in this chain of events. Because the biggest question floating around these exclusive theories isn't just about what Kody can do today, it is about how much of that standing actually survives once she turns 18. And exactly where does Truly sit on that incredibly important ticking timeline? In the American legal system, 18 is the magic, undisputed number. It is the absolute finish line for custody battles, forced visitations, and parental legal rights. The exact second a child blows out the candles on their 18th birthday, they become a legal adult in the eyes of the state, completely untethered from the legal authority and administrative control of their parents. They can move exactly where they want, associate with whomever they want, sign whatever contracts they want, and, yes, legally change their entire name to absolutely whatever they want without needing a single signature, permission slip, or head nod from a mother or a father. Kody absolutely knows this. Christine knows this better than anyone. And you better believe Truly knows this. Right now, Truly is actively navigating that chaotic, deeply frustrating liminal space between childhood and adulthood. She isn't quite at the legal finish line yet, which is exactly why this current explosive battle over her name is so incredibly intense and so heavily scrutinized by the entire Sister Wives fandom. If she were already 18 years old, dropping the name Brown would just be a standard, boring trip to the local courthouse, a simple filing fee, and a judge's quick stamp of approval. It would be a total non-story bureaucratically. The adults wouldn't even be factored into the equation because their permission would be irrelevant. But because she is still a minor, every single action she takes is intensely viewed through the hyper-focused lens of her parents' ongoing bitter war. Her quiet decision to drop the name on that school form is being interpreted by the public, and likely by Kody himself, not just as her own personal independent choice, but as a heavily calculated strategic maneuver in the grander, toxic chess match between Christine and Kody. Fans are endlessly debating the motivations. Is she doing this specifically to spite him? Is Christine secretly behind the scenes encouraging it, whispering in her ear to reject the Brown legacy? Or is this purely the fierce, autonomous decision of a young woman who has quietly watched her father systematically alienate her older siblings for years, and has simply decided she wants absolutely no part of his brand, his drama, or his legacy? As she inches closer and closer to that 18th birthday, Kody's window of absolute control is violently slamming shut. Every single month that passes on the calendar strips away a tiny, irreversible fraction of his legal leverage. And that deep, unshakable desperation, the deafening sound of that ticking clock, might explain exactly why the reaction to a simple, seemingly harmless school form allegedly escalated to the unprecedented level of school board intervention. He is not just fighting Christine anymore. He is fighting a losing, desperate battle against time itself. And time always wins. This brings us to a highly specific, heavily debated date that acts as the final, massive, earth-shattering link in this chain of events. We absolutely have to talk about July 9th, 2026. This specific date unexpectedly surfaced in the absolute thick of the summer social media frenzy, and it brought with it a birthday-adjacent claim that entirely shifted the public perspective of this story. According to deep-dive exclusive theories and anonymous insider claims that completely took over the Sister Wives forums and TikTok comment sections, July 9th wasn't just a random Thursday on the calendar. It was allegedly tied directly to a massive milestone, a strict procedural deadline, or perhaps a highly significant legal filing that perfectly coincided with a major shift in Truly's legal standing or age-related rights in her new home state of Utah. You have to understand that family law is incredibly nuanced. Some states, and heavily implied in these exclusive theories regarding Utah, allow minors of a certain age, often 14 to 16, to have a highly significant, legally recognized, and documented voice in their own custody, living arrangements, and identity matters. The rampant rumors suggested that on or immediately around this July 9th date, a formal claim was made. Whether this was officially filed by Christine's legal team in a courthouse or delivered through tense, back-channel family communications between lawyers, the claim asserted that Truly had officially reached the specific age and documented maturity level where her absolute refusal to use the name Brown was no longer just a rebellious teenager acting out, but a legally protected, deeply held personal preference that could hold up in court. Imagine the absolute, undeniable shockwave that specific type of legal claim would send crashing through Kody's camp. For years, his entire public and private defense strategy has been to instantly dismiss the very real grievances of his children by entirely blaming their mothers. He has stood in front of reality television cameras and repeatedly claimed that Christine or Janelle were actively poisoning the kids against him, turning them into enemies. It is his ultimate, impenetrable defense mechanism. In his mind, if a child doesn't want to see him, or speak to him, or use his name, it can't possibly be a result of his own actions or his own neglect. It absolutely must be the mother's toxic, alienating influence. but a formal legal claim explicitly centered around a specific, birthday-adjacent date, asserting that Truly herself is making a conscious, fully documented, and legally recognized choice to permanently distance herself from his name? That entirely destroys his foundational narrative. It rips the rug right out from under his ego. It means the profound rejection isn't coming from Christine's influence. It is coming directly, undeniably, from Truly's own mind and heart. The July 9th claim, whether it was a formalized legal motion gathering dust in a clerk's office, or a definitive, uncrossable line drawn in the sand during a bitter mediation session, effectively cornered him. It backed him into a wall and forced him to confront the horrifying reality that his youngest daughter with Christine is looking directly at the legacy he built, looking at the very name he insists commands unquestionable respect, and actively, purposefully choosing to leave it entirely blank on a piece of paper. And this brings us to a moment where we need to take a deliberate step back from the frantic social media updates, the alleged procedural deadlines, and the intense bureaucratic chess match. We need to slow this entire story down and look at the deeply human element at the absolute center of this storm, because we have to talk about the true weight of a name. What does it actually mean to set down a surname? We are not just talking about crossing out a word on a piece of paper or filing an administrative request. We are talking about the profound, heavy, emotional reality of actively severing a tie to your own lineage. In almost every culture in the world, a surname is supposed to be your foundation. It is supposed to be your ultimate safety net. From the exact moment you are born, that name is attached to you as a promise of belonging. It tells the world who your people are, who will protect you, and what tribe you belong to. But what happens when that tribe fractures? For over a decade on reality television, the surname Brown was pitched to the world as an impenetrable shield. It was a brand built on the fundamental concept that a massive, plural family could overcome any obstacle through unity and faith. But that was the television version. The reality, especially for the youngest children who came of age during the bitter dissolution of that dream, was vastly different. Truly did not get to experience the golden united years of the Vegas cul-de-sac in the same way her older siblings did. She grew up in the shadow of a deeply fractured family dynamic, absorbing the tension, the unspoken resentments, and the very public, very painful deterioration of her parents' marriage. For her, the name Brown does not represent a safe harbor or a unified tribe. It represents public trauma. It represents division. It represents a father who has spent the most critical developmental years of her life demanding rigid loyalty from a distance, prioritizing his own ego and his specific household over the emotional well-being of his other children. When you view it through that lens, setting down that name is not an act of teenage rebellion. It is an act of profound self-preservation. Imagine the quiet, staggering courage it takes for a young woman to look at the legacy she was handed, a legacy broadcast to millions of strangers for her entire life, and decide that it does not fit her. When Truly stood in that beige administrative office in Utah and chose to leave that space blank, she was doing something incredibly powerful. She was reclaiming her own narrative. In a deeply patriarchal system like the one Kody Brown advocates for, women and children are often treated as extensions of the patriarch. Their identities are fundamentally wrapped up in his name, his authority, and his ultimate vision for the family. By dropping the name, Truly is quietly, permanently stepping out from under that umbrella of ownership. She is effectively saying that she will not be defined by the reality television brand. She will not carry the heavy, toxic baggage of her father's public failures, and she will not let a hollow surname dictate her future. It is a terrifying, beautiful step toward absolute independence. But as we dissect every single rumor, trace every timeline, and analyze the deep psychological implications of dropping a family name, there is something absolutely vital that we have to acknowledge right here, right now. And that is the reality of what is still completely unknown. As much as we love diving into these exclusive theories and piecing together the breadcrumbs left behind on social media, admitting what we do not know is the only honest way to tell this story. Public records have limits. Insider leaks have biases, and social media sleuths, no matter how dedicated, are ultimately observing from the outside looking in. We know the dates that have the internet on fire. We know the explosive discussions surrounding April 2nd, July 9th, and July 30th. But we do not have the CCTV footage of that Utah school office. We do not know exactly what Truly was feeling in the exact moment she put that pen to paper. Did her hand shake? Did she smile? Did she fill out that form entirely alone? Or was Christine standing right next to her, offering quiet, unwavering support? We simply do not know. We also do not know the exact, verified contents of that heavily rumored phone call from Kody to the school board. We do not know if a local Utah administrator actually had to sit on the phone and listen to a furious reality television star demand the reinstatement of his patriarchal authority, or if the interaction was handled quietly by lawyers behind closed doors. We do not know if Kody has actually picked up the phone and spoken directly to Truly about this, or if he is solely directing his anger at Christine, once again entirely bypassing the agency of his own child. And most importantly, we do not know how this ends, because this story is not a closed chapter in a book. It is an active, ongoing reality for a young woman who is just trying to navigate her way into adulthood under the intense, unforgiving glare of a public spotlight. And acknowledging those massive, glaring blind spots is crucial. It protects the real human beings at the center of this drama. It separates the factual, verifiable timeline from the sensationalized rumors. I built this from public reporting, and public reporting has holes. So here's my ask. Tell me what I got wrong. Not what you disagree with, what I got factually wrong. I'll put a correction at the top of the next video with your name on it.